help us through the United piece of this and try to help us also understand what it means to the other airlines, including Southwest, which we're going to be hearing from next week.
Yeah, for United, I mean, from a Max standpoint, I think they have very little exposure, about 1 to 2% of their capacities on the Max. But that kind of increasingly grows as you get into the end of the year. Up to about 4% of their fleet is going to be in Max, was supposed to be in Max by the end of the year. It's easier to kind of manage through in the off-peak season. You have extra capacity that you can reaccommodate passengers. But as you get into the peak summer season, and they have canceled some into the early part, you've seen American and Southwest having canceled more into kind of August timeframe. It is going to get tougher to accommodate that. And you know, if, as an operator, you want to fly as much as you can in the summer because that's when demand is high and there's good pricing as well. So it's going to be a little tough for them. It's going to put more costs for them. But as you kind of implied a little bit earlier, that you know there might be some opportunity to get some costs back from Boeing eventually, but maybe not immediately. But from an industry standpoint, I think it could be a good thing because it kind of keeps supply in check, and it could mean higher prices for consumers.
Higher prices. Just speak to what you're expecting in terms of results this afternoon, and relate that back, if you could, to Delta, which did beat.
Yes, so you know, Delta had a kind of a unique American Express credit card agreement adjustment that really helped them as well. If you kind of take out that contribution, which is real money, not to dismiss it, but from a read through to the group, Delta kind of came in on 1Q unit revenue trends, and their 2Q unit revenue trends actually did beat expectations. And so for United, early March, they came in and said they're probably going to be somewhere at the midpoint of their kind of 0 to 3% passenger unit revenue guide. We think they might do a little bit better because corporate has been strong. And then as we look into 2Q, I think most investors are going to expect another 0 to 3% guide. So we'll have to see what they come out with. But generally, the kind of the expectations are for kind of inline 1Q and then maybe sequentially similar to maybe slightly better 2Q.
Hey, Savi, what's your outlook on? I think we just threw it on the screen, but it was a little confusing there. What's your 12-month outlook on United Continental?
Yeah, so we actually have a kind of a market perform rating on it, so we don't have a target price. But you know, the group is well situated. We're favorably kind of have a favorable view on the group. We just see kind of better risk reward in some of the other airlines. For United, you know, being exposed to corporate and having more international exposure, I think sets them pretty well up for kind of the first half. As you get into the second half, they have some tougher comps. But again, I think the group will do well. Higher fuel prices is important for the group, but I think you know, capacity is going to be managed well, and the group will do well.
By the way, what are the implications of JetBlue's announcement in terms of it doing these transatlantic flights?
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, it's a 2021 event. You know, it's clearly a natural next step for JetBlue, and you know, it is going to be new capacity into the market, and especially you know, capacity that could pressure premium cabin pricing for the legacy carriers. So it is definitely something to watch. Unfortunately, you know, it's a couple years out, and a lot can happen between now and then.
Savi, have you done the back of the envelope analysis of what the impact would be if you took all 737 MAXs out of the major carrier schedules till the end of the year? And I'm asking you this only because when it was initially grounded, it seemed like a lot of analysts were very optimistic in terms of the time frame to get it recertified and back in the air. And as time goes on, that time frame seems to be longer and longer. We've seen a couple of downgrades on shares of Boeing in particular, acknowledging the fact that it will, in fact, take longer. So what's the worst case?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like, you know, Boeing clearly is working on a solution, has a solution, but I think just there's going to be a lot of scrutiny and rigorous testing of those solutions. And there's probably also going to be a lot of focus on the type of training required. You know, the systems were so similar to the NG version that before it was mostly kind of an iPad training on kind of the differences, and we think that there's going to be at least computer-based training. I think worst-case scenario might be requiring simulator training, which would take much longer because there just aren't enough simulators out there. But we're thinking, from a group standpoint, worst case is that it goes through the summer, and that looks like what's happening today. And then for kind of Southwest, United, and American, the longer it goes, the more of its fleet, these MAX aircraft are supposed to be. So it gets tougher and tougher to offset that capacity, but easier in off peaks, just because you do have a little extra capacity anyway. So I think we're kind of seeing the worst case scenario for the kind of the traditional U.S. airlines, for the operators of those airlines. For the other airlines, there's actually probably a little bit of benefit. We think you could have about a point to a point and a half of capacity coming out of the market. That doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're growing 4 to 5%, that's a meaningful amount of capacity that can come out. So it might actually be good, especially as in the off-peak periods when we seem to have a little too much capacity. That could be good news, short-term good news, but good news for other operators.
So interesting, the bad news turns into good news.
Of course it does for somebody out there. Who's your top pick, Savvy, before we go?
Yeah, so among the traditional airlines, we really like Spirit here.
Okay.
Spirit. I don't even put them in the traditional airline category.
What do you put them in?
I don't know. Just very super discounted. Why do you like Spirit? Just so we know.
We think that they've invested a lot. They didn't have to work too hard in the past, and now it's a much more competitive environment for them. And they've invested a lot, and I think it's a very different airline that's going to show some good earnings growth and good earnings recovery. That's in the you're right. That's in the ULCC category amongst the kind of the larger airlines. Delta is our top pick.